but we will have to change to English or otherwise Portuguese. Do we have anyone here speaking Portuguese? No. What about Danish? No Danish either. Okay. So why Portuguese and Danish? And maybe I'll start with a quick history, background on myself. So I'm originally from Portugal, but 10 years ago I moved to Denmark and I've been living there ever since. And of those 10, the last 5 I've been in Accenture. Actually, it's quite a fun fact. I think that tomorrow will be precisely the 5 years, the anniversary that I've started in Accenture. So I think it's a really nice way to celebrate the 5 years in the company. Okay, so as you might have seen, talking about DevOps in the enterprise and what I've learned so far, but maybe before we start, who here would say is a developer? A lot of hands, the majority. Operations? A few operations as well. Test? No testers? So how many of you then would you say that you are already working with DevOps? Quite a few already. So maybe there's actually something that I have to learn from you and not the other way around, but we will see if we can learn from each other. And by the way, is there anyone from management that I might have missed? A few as well. So I'll try to be nice with you. Okay, so for this talk, we'll start to talk a little bit about DevOps. Maybe try to argue a little bit for why it is important, but I see that a lot of you are already working with DevOps, so there's maybe not much need for that. Then I will share some of the lessons that I've learned and then talk about some of the real life cases that I've worked on related with DevOps. And somewhere along the way, I will need your help, so I hope that you all have connectivity so that we will have a short survey. And I think that's also valid for the ones watching at home if anyone is watching. So you'll be able to answer as well. Okay. So when I started working and focusing more on DevOps in the enterprise with our really big enterprise customers, it was maybe around 3-4 years ago that I started focusing more on that. The question was quite often, DevOps, what's that? Or after a while it kind of evolved into, yeah, DevOps, that's really cool, but that's only for startups. We can't do that in a big enterprise. So it was very nice to see that in the last couple of years, it really has shifted more to DevOps. How do I get it? How do I leverage it the best way possible in my organization? And that's something that's really good to see, and that's why I'm so happy to be working in this field with the big enterprises. Maybe before we start, we should define DevOps, because you might be wondering, what do you actually mean by DevOps? Is it the same thing that I mean by DevOps? And it's a little bit like the tale with the man and the elephant. I don't know if you know it, but you always have this, depending on where you are around the elephant, you will think that it's something different if you don't actually see the elephant. So this is actually where I would like to have your help, because I have some answers for what DevOps is. I'm not saying it's the answer. I have some, but I would like to start by asking what are your answers and what is DevOps to you. So this is the part that I will need your help. We have a little word cloud that we have set up here. So if you could go to menti.com and use that code, and I will start the voting. So it would be great if you would go there and put some words into what do you think DevOps is. What is DevOps to you? And I'll wait a little bit to see if we have some answers. It would be interesting to see what it is to you. It's always risky with something live. In worst case, we will move on. But do you have anyone? All right. I see some things coming in. Holistic, automation, approach. Very good. trauma. Development and operation, cloud, stability, setting up processes, magic. So it's kind of, I can see we have a whole spectrum here between magic and trauma. So it's quite an interesting one. Maybe we should dig a bit deeper into that. So we have 23. Anyone else? See still some things coming up? And I can see that automation is definitely the one that you identify the most with. Software to production. Hello world. Hopefully a bit more than that at some point as well. Have some more. Culture is also a big one there. Agile, CI/CD. Still things coming in. I really like the magic part though. All right, so automation, culture, process, software to production, cloud, CI/CD. I think it's a very good mix of concepts and way to define DevOps. Thank you everybody for the help here. It was really good. And if you're here, the one who answered trauma, maybe you come to me after the talk. I would like to hear a little bit more about your trauma, and maybe we can fix that. But I can't promise. Okay, so a little bit of the concept you really touched upon them already, answering the question of what DevOps is to you. It's different things, depends on who you ask. It's a lot about getting development and operations to collaborate, to talk to each other, eventually to be in the same team, hence the name DevOps. It's about automation, so this was I think the highest voted definition or concept. About tools, it's about infrastructure as code as well, and we will touch a little bit on that on the examples. It's about continuous delivery. We also had the CI/CD, so continuous integration, continuous delivery in the exercise. But it's also culture change and small deployments, and that really comes from the agile part. And this is, I wanted to take a little bit of time to argue for why it is important. Maybe I don't have to convince you, maybe I'm preaching to the choir here a little bit, but I would still like to take a look at it. So, of course, the developers in the center, that's where they should be, right? And here we have that the developers really want change, right? You want to add or modify features fast, and you really want to create change. But then we had, some years ago, we started identifying this conflict, this wall between business and development, where business wants flexibility, really improving time to market, and in a way, it's also the same thing that development wants. But I think the main issue here is that they weren't talking to each other often enough. So that's where Agile came in, really trying to get the business to work closer together with development, to get faster feedback from business to development while the developers were working on the new features. So this is the main point, as I see it, for Agile, and there's a lot of concepts behind that then, with the smaller increments, smaller batches of work to get things done faster all the way to production. And I think that's where we then see the other side, where we had the developers really wanting change, and then we had operations, which quite often are then in a fully separate organization within the company. And operations really, what they really want is stability. So you did have this, and in most cases you still do, this difference between the developers wanting to push things really faster, wanting to make change, and then you have operations wanting stability, and one way of having stability is to not touch it, right? So this is where DevOps came in to really try to break this wall between development and operations, to try to get them to collaborate more, to work together, and to have shared goals, right? Because this is one of the very important things. If you have development and operation working separately with different goals, then they will push for achieving those goals separately. So if you get them together, and if you work on having the same goals, then things will start working better, and the collaboration will improve. And of course, this is one of the other words that came out from your answers. Culture is a very important part of it, and we will look a little bit more into that. Is this kind of this view of Agile and DevOps, is this the view that you had before? Does this change something? I see some yeses, some maybes, maybe. Okay. So, I'm here to tell you a little bit about the things I have learned. And the very good thing about learning, at least one thing that I really enjoy, is that you're never really done with it. You learn, you kind of keep adapting your knowledge based on the things you experience, but you're always learning and improving on the things that you know. So if any of the things that I'm sharing here, if you don't agree with them, please reach out to me in the end of the talk. I would love to have a discussion, hopefully a healthy discussion, and see, maybe I will learn something, maybe you will learn something. So I think that's an important part of learning and of being here together. Okay, so first thing is that when you start looking into Agile and DevOps, you really see that it's very hard to Agile to fully succeed, for you to take the most out of Agile without having DevOps in place. You can have business and development working together and having fast feedback on the things that the development team is working on, but if you're not able to push those changes, those features fast and reliably into production, where the value really is, then you're not really taking full advantage of Agile. So these two really work very well together. Another point is that DevOps doesn't have to be all or nothing. You don't have to either say, okay, I cannot go to DevOps because I cannot go for a full enterprise transformation into DevOps. So you can start small and perhaps do a small POC. There are several different ways of starting small. Maybe you have a small team working more with kind of this concept. Maybe you have in your enterprise a process that is done manually as part of the CI/CD pipeline. Maybe you can focus on adding some automation there and automating just one of the processes to start with. So this kind of bottom-up initiatives for implementing DevOps, they do work pretty well, but at the same time, you need to remember that you do need support from the leadership once you want to scale up the DevOps implementation. So it works very well if you start bottom up and you start trying out different things, but then once you see those working, and I would argue that hopefully you would see those working, then you do need to have the buy-in from the leadership to be able to have a full-scale DevOps implementation or transformation in your organization. Okay, so another point is configuration management and automation are crucial in this DevOps journey. It is very hard to have a good result with your DevOps initiatives if you don't have configuration management, if you don't have your source code, your configuration saved in a configuration management tool. And then of course, automation. It's very hard to get reliable results and to have things fast into production if you don't have things automated. And that's both for the build, for the deployments, and for the testing part as well. Another point is collaboration is key. And I think we also had collaboration in the World Cloud there. So it's very much all about collaboration, because you want to have, on the agile side, you want to have business and development working together, and then you bring the DevOps in, and you want the development and operations to also work together. So if you're not able to have this culture of trust, that people do want to collaborate together, then it's very hard to really have success with DevOps. And kind of the last point here that I wanted to make on kind of a little bit the lessons learned is that you cannot just implement DevOps. So it's not something that you have a small project and you go in and you install some tools, you install a brand new CI/CD pipeline and you have things working. That's a very good step. As I mentioned, it's good to start small, but you do need some other things, because DevOps, it's also about behavior. Changing behavior, it's a very important part of the transformation, of the journey. It's also about culture, it's about process. So if you have a pipeline fully automated, CI/CD with continuous deployment all the way to production, or maybe we should say continuous delivery in this case. If you have continuous delivery, if everything is automated, if you can deploy in production automatically, but if you still have the same old processes where you do need to create a ticket to get approval to deploy something, then it's very hard to really take full advantage of DevOps and have fast deployments into production. Of course, you wouldn't have that problem with continuous deployment, because then you would be automatically going all the way to production. So it's a lot of these things, and I did come to the DevOps world via the development side, via the tool side. So for me, it was all about all the cool tools that were out there, and then I was very eager to install them and try them out. But then once you start doing a few of the transformations and a few of the projects, then you kind of realize, yeah, the tools, that's kind of the easy stuff. You go in, you install them. It's very easy, especially in a greenfield scenario. It's very easy to get things up and running. But then making the changes to the other things in the organization, that's the tough part. And with that, I really enjoyed this quote from Sanjeev Sharma, because it's really a cultural movement, and I think that's an important message to take and to remember. So we do have Sanjeev Sharma. He wrote a book on DevOps for the enterprise. In the end of the presentation, I do have a few suggestions for books, and this one will be there. Okay, so this was a bit about the lessons that I've learned in the last years working with DevOps in the enterprise. And now, as promised, I wanted to show you or guide you through a few of the examples of the work that I've been doing with DevOps. And I kind of chose 3 different types of work. So one is more the kind of the long-term implementation of a project with the DevOps side of it. Then the other one is a more of a short-time engagement with the client. And then the other one is, the third one is actually an internal kind of proof of concept that we are running in Accenture in the Nordics. So this is really what I want to show you now. And let's start with the implementation project. So this is really a project that I've been doing at a European bank, and this is you can see here the pipeline for deploying things to production. So this is part of a core banking implementation that we were working on. So in this case, this setup was, these machines were set in kind of traditional VMware virtual servers, and we had an in-house configuration platform for configuring and deploying things from the workstation where you're working with the code. Then you push the code, and then you would go all the way to production. And we have been doing quite a lot of work here to automate as much as possible of this pipeline as well. But one of the things we saw is that with this setup, we couldn't really provide enough flexibility for the developers and testers at the project. So they really needed fast turnaround on creation of environments, because sometimes they would just want to run a small POC to try something out. And with this setup, with these environments, it was taking quite a bit of time to just provision the environment. So the cost of really trying something out was very high. So what we did here is, at the time, this was around a bit over 2 years now, maybe, yeah, a bit over 2 years. There was an initiative at the company to start with Red Hat OpenShift and to try it out. So we actually thought, wait, why don't we grab the core banking application that we have in the setup there in blue, configured in the virtual servers? Why don't we grab that, migrate it into containers, and see how it runs in OpenShift? So this was really kind of part of the culture of experimentation that we really want to have in the company. And what happened was that it worked, and I will go a little bit more into kind of the actual setup of the core banking application in containers. But what that allowed us is that it allowed us to be much more flexible and much faster to reply to the demand of the developers and testers. So as you can see here in red, you have all sorts of different environments that now are complementing the main line with the virtual servers. So you have the sandbox environment. So these are environments where the teams are able to really test their things, and it's a self-service kind of environment in the sense that once the teams make some changes in the code, they will be the ones building that code, or pressing a button basically to build and deploy that code into these sandboxes. Then we also have this kind of pre-dev environment that allow the teams to have a faster feedback on the changes that they're merging in the base code. And then we had kind of two sets of environments that are quite important for us. One is the different set of test environments, and here the main point is that in banking and with a core banking application, it's very important for you to do what they call time travel tests. So this is, well, maybe not as fancy as you might think from time travel, so no one is actually time traveling in this setup, but you are testing the products that are being developed as part of the program. And the tricky thing with this is that different products have different requirements in terms of testing, different timelines. So you want to see how they mature and how they behave along the kind of in 1 year in the future, 2 years, 5 years, but some products you want to test kind of monthly, how they evolve, and some you want to test yearly. So with this setup, with having more flexibility, we were able to provide quite a few test environments where they can have different time travel timelines and activities in each of them. So they can really test the different products. And the other one is that we also enabled the employees at the bank to train in this the new core banking application. So we have this. I told you a little bit about what we got out of it. I think now we have around 50, 60 of these core banking application environments running in OpenShift. But what is actually in one of these environments? And that's what I want to show you now. So this is an OpenShift project, so it's kind of a self-contained core banking application. And you see here we have 3 containers in the project. We have WebLogic container, so we have WebLogic, Oracle WebLogic running inside a container. We have Oracle database as well, so that the application that is running in the WebLogic container, that's where it persists the data. And then we also have the Oracle Service Bus for the integrations, and that one is also relying on service virtualization, so that the team can test the full scenario without having to have the surrounding test environments for every single of the projects. So maybe some of you are looking at this setup and thinking, well, that's quite some heavy containers that you have there. And there's two sides to that. On one hand, it's true, they are quite heavy, but they work. So that's the first important point for us. And then the second is that when we did this migration from the virtual servers into the container setup, into OpenShift, we wanted to make sure that the technology stack that we have now in OpenShift is as close as possible to the one that we have in the virtual servers. And the main reason for that is that we want the developers and testers to have the results of their testing as reliable as possible. So if we would try, and we have tried with a few different technology stacks, but then it would mean that we wouldn't be so sure that it would still work in the virtual server setup. But for example, one of the things that we kind of experimented with as well was, you can see the Oracle database there in the container. We do have, for some of the environments, when we have a requirement for a bigger database that wouldn't really perform that well inside a container, we do have that in an external Oracle database, and we have our WebLogic container talking to that external one. So we are trying different things. So what was really the main outcome of this project, of this kind of efforts of migrating things into OpenShift and setting them up there? The first, and this was really the main pain point that we were addressing with this project, was environment provisioning, and especially the environment provisioning time. Before, with the virtual server setup, it would take us around 2-3 weeks to provision a full environment that the developers or testers could use. And now it's really under 1 hour. Depending on which version we are deploying with, sometimes it's just half an hour to get the environment up and running. And the main reason behind that is really the configuration and the deployment complexity and the changes that we have there. We went from a configuration and deployment that relied on several components, like the WebLogic, the database, and in the traditional setup, these components were not defined all in the same place, so we're not configured in the same place. And if you do want to do a deployment, it can get quite complex with all the things that you have to orchestrate. With this new setup in containers, we kind of went from that to a scenario where we do have infrastructure as code. So all our WebLogic setup, the Oracle database, the service bus, everything is defined as code and is built into a container, into this image that you can just then use for the different environments. And one of the other important changes here is that now, whenever we need to deploy a new version of the application, it's actually much simpler, because all you have to do is deploy a new container. And then you have, that container has all for example, the WebLogic container has all the application components there. So you don't have to deploy different things, you just deploy the new container. So this was quite an exciting project to be involved in, and it was really nice to see the results of this change and what it made possible. And I would say we're not done with it yet, so it's really looking forward to where we can take it, or to see where we can take it. Okay, so this was the kind of the bigger implementation project that I've been working on. The other one that I wanted to share with you was this hackathon that we did at a client. So the idea here is that we got together. I mean, we were seeing that the client was trying out new things and was ready to also had this culture of experimentation, and we really wanted to show them what is possible with OpenShift and with containers. So we got together with Red Hat and Microsoft, and in one evening we went to the client side. We sit down together with them, and we set up OpenShift on Azure for the client. So here it was really the idea to set up an environment where they could do several POCs and where they could try out different things that are made possible with an OpenShift cluster. And the other part is that we also kind of show them how easy it is to set up that cluster. And the third part is that it was quite a fun evening. We had some pizzas and there was some good time just sharing and trying to get things to work and then trying out different things that were possible. And then this is a little bit related with the third kind of type of work that I wanted to share. And this is really, we're also running an internal cluster of OpenShift in the Nordics. So we're really using it to experiment, to learn, and to experiment with OpenShift on Azure. We are actually, the idea here is that we are doing several hackathons, maybe once a month, where we try different things. So one of the hackathons might be to set up a specific application monitoring tool that we want to try out. And another one might be on a security tool that we also want to kind of evaluate and see how it works. The other side of it is that it really allowed us to do some fast prototyping in some of the tools that you could see that the client was looking at, or some of the clients. But then it isn't always just easy to set something up at a client. There's all these different kind of concerns that you have to take into consideration and all the processes. So this really allows us to say, okay, this is we think it's something interesting. Let's just set it up in our internal cluster, see how it works, and then we can demo it and show it. So this was really the third kind of type of work that I've been involved with in the last months. And yeah, it is a lot of fun. So it's when you are able to merge work and fun, then I think it's always a plus. So this was really the three types of work that I wanted to share with you. Thank you. And I would leave you with a few books. Thank you. So this is just some of the books that I've enjoyed in the last months, where you can start from, in the left you have the Phoenix project. How many of you know the Phoenix project? Not that many. So it's quite a fun, well, at least I thought it was fun. I hope you think as well. A fun novel about DevOps as well. So it's also inspired by The Goal, if you know kind of more the lean background. Very nice book, very lightweight as well. So then you have the DevOps Handbook, which is more kind of specific about DevOps and the practices. And then the other two on the right, you have the DevOps Adoption Playbook, which is the one from Sanjeev Sharma that I quoted before. It's a lot about how to use DevOps in the enterprise, and in the same kind of theme, you also have this DevOps for the Modern Enterprise by Mirko Herring, which is very interesting as well. I'm actually at the moment reading this one, and I have it here with me, so if you want to have a look at the book, you can come by a little bit later. So Mirko is actually one of our main DevOps leads in Accenture globally, so it's really cool to see a book coming out of his experience as well with DevOps for the Modern Enterprise. So I hope you enjoy some of these books. If you have any questions, I'll be at the speaker's corner for a while after the talk. So thank you very much for coming, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Do you have any questions so far? No? Ah, yeah.
There's one there. I'm a manager, if you remember. Okay.
So you've told us a lot about some kind of technical stuff. What may be your comments or some short story about the organizational part of all these changes? Just because we are talking that DevOps is a culture, probably the process, whatever approach, and it's more about ephemeral things, yeah? So usually it's not about doing things, it's about how to deal with the managers, with decision makers, whatever, how just to make these negotiations. So maybe some short story or idea or your vision of how things should be done in order to implement DevOps practices? Thanks.
Oh, that's a tough one. So if anyone has the exact answer to this question, please let me know, because I would very much like to know as well. You will tell me. Okay. But I mean, it is a very good question, and it's something that I'm really focusing on at the moment. And I think part of it is it does help if you started from the bottom up at some point, so that you do have these success stories to show to management. Because if you go in with a kind of a very abstract idea of what to achieve and what you want to do, then it might be hard to sell the idea. But one of the things that we see missing quite a bit is that when you start this kind of small POCs, these small kind of experimentations with DevOps, don't forget your KPIs. So it's very important, I think it happens quite often, that you start doing something, and then after you made some changes, you start measuring your KPIs. So how long does it actually take you to make a change from business all the way to production? But if you only start that after you did the changes, then you don't know what is the actual impact. So I think it's important to have these KPIs and to measure them before you do the changes and after you do them, so that if you come to management and say, well, we did these changes, we reduced the time to get a change from business all the way to production by, I don't know, 20–50%, then I think you start getting their attention. And I think that's very important.